Okay, so this is the orientation for the Certificate of Public Librarianship program, the winter 2020 version. It's slightly different each time we do this, but basically the same material. So thank you all for joining. I'm so glad you're part of the certificate program. And I know some of you have already started doing classes, so an orientation might seem a little counterintuitive, but hopefully this will be helpful in finding ways to get classes. And if you have questions about requirements, and since there's about, I think there's 8 or 9 of us on this, feel free to enter, put your mics back on and ask a question if you have them. And if that doesn't work, we can figure out a different technique, but it should work pretty well, I think. So basically this morning we're just going to go through the requirements, sort of why we have the certificate program and different ways to get classes. That's a big part of it because we only offer the classes here, the core courses, once a year, so it's often helpful to know other options, free options especially, of where you can find courses. So let's see. This is just a description. It's off of our website about why the certificate program kind of started. And basically it's for people who are working in libraries but who don't have formal library training. So that happens a lot in Vermont, other places as well, but we don't have a university here that has a Master's of Library Science program here in Vermont. They all have online programs, but also a lot of the jobs are part-time. A lot of people come to it from other fields, which is great. It gives us a really rich workforce, but even though people are trained in other areas, they might be working in a library without having had formal library training. So this is basically just to hopefully get everyone that's working in those situations on sort of an even playing field with a certain level of library-specific training, and then they can add in more as they go. Some people get the certificate and then go on to get a master's degree, which is great if they can afford it and have that interest, but it's also a way to help, to some degree, professionalize our field, and it's an advocacy tool that you can use with trustees and patrons and in job applications to prove that you actually have had some formal training, even though it's not as robust as a master's would be. Can everyone hear me okay? I guess if you can't, you wouldn't hear me ask that question. But can someone give me a thumbs up if sound is okay for where you are?
Yes.
Okay, thank you. I'll assume that that's probably true for others as well. So this is a graphic of what the requirements for the certificate are. It's on our website. So there are 4 core areas: collection development, information services, which is a reference basically, it's sort of a more contemporary term for reference services, cataloging, and administration. So the way
Excuse me, Joy. Is the screen supposed to be changing and showing me different things?
Yes, it is. Is that not working?
Yeah. Mine is only showing the first slide, the Certificate of Public Librarianship orientation.
Huh. Is that true for everyone else too?
Yes, that's true.
All right.
Yes.
Okay. I will. Let me try to do this a different way then. Let's see. Is that better? Are you looking at a pie chart now?
I'm still seeing, now I'm seeing everybody.
Hello.
Okay.
Oh, there it is.
Now I
Now
see.
I'm seeing a pie chart.
Okay. I would like you to see pie chart. That's what I'm looking at, and that's what I was starting to talk. So everyone's looking at this. It says continuing education units.
Yes.
Okay. So this is the pie chart of the requirements. So there's the 4 core ones, and each of those 4 core courses are 25 units each. And that's sort of partly because they're most important, but it's actually historic because it used to be 5 days long and each day was 5 credits. But we just sort of kept it because it's a nice round number of 100. And even though some of the credits go 1 hour, 1 contact hour to 1 unit, these don't really work that way. So don't, sometimes people are confused, like these courses are no longer 25 hours long, but they will give you 25 credits. And those are required. And then there's 40 units of electives, which can be pretty broad. They just have to have some sort of library connection, but some people have done things like management classes or finance classes that aren't specifically library focused, but they can apply to library. So basically with the electives and technology, the best way to do it is to select something and run it by me before to make sure it would count and how much it would count for. And then there are 10 units of library technology, which that can be a little bit broad too. It can be just general technology things, or it can be how are you using technology in your library with patrons, training patrons. That tends to be kind of a difficult one to find things for because we don't have a lot of workshops here about that. We're trying to up that a little bit, but we can talk about that more when we're looking at different areas where you can get courses. Does this make sense to everybody? Any questions on this?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
So it's 150 credits total, and you have 5 years to do that. So that's a pretty long time, especially since a lot of them can be done online now. That 5 years also is historic, but you know, people are busy too, so it's nice to have that extra time. And basically, you start earning the credits anytime after you've registered, and sometimes, you know, we're a little bit lenient about that just because of the if that hasn't been, if somebody doesn't realize that and they've started taking things. But the idea is you register and then you start doing workshops and those start accruing. And then twice a year I ask people to send in updates of what they've taken and I process them. And if you've finished all of your credits, you'll get a letter of completion, and then that's actually your official proof that you are certified. So that's something you can use with your select board, your trustees, and just to, you know, job applications, your resume and whatnot. And then certificates are given out each year at the VLA conference. So there might be people who've gotten actually certified throughout the year, and they will get their official letter, but they won't get a certificate until that event in May. And of course, if you don't attend, we would just mail it. And there's one caveat on that, though. If you are working to get, you know, if it's budget time and your trustees are discussing a pay raise, or if you're applying for another job or something like that, just you can always get in touch with me, and I'll make sure that I get that information to you if it's going to make a timely difference in your job situation. So, you know, there's some flexibility with that. But basically, it's I try to keep it twice a year because there's over 150 people in this program. So, like, when people just send things in, as they do them, it kind of happens. It's really hard to manage it that way. So I just do it in 2 chunks of time. So the required core courses, we offer all of those here at the Department of Libraries, but we only have the capacity to offer them in person once a year. So that that's why some of them have online options. If if you miss it and can't come, there are some alternatives to do it. They consist of 1 long day, usually 6 or 7 hours, a full day, and then a follow-up or second half that's a half a day, which is usually a few weeks later. So to earn the 25 credits, you need to attend both of those things. And as of now, anyway, the schedule that we're on, we're trying to keep it kind of consistent so people can plan. Cataloging and information services are in the spring, with administration and collection development being in the fall. So we have, I'll show you the schedule when we near the end, but both of those cataloging and information services are already scheduled for April and May, or March, April and May of this coming spring. We just finished in October and November, the other 2, but we'll do them again next fall as well. So for anything that's an elective or technology or anything outside of those 4 courses, the way the credits are determined is basically 1 contact hour equals 1 continuing education unit. So that was what I was saying before. The 25 credits for the core courses doesn't quite map to that, but for anything besides those, that's basically how it works. except there are a couple other things that if you go to a conference, you can get time for conference sessions, and that's either 1 hour per session or goes up to 12. So like if you went to a multi-day conference, you wouldn't necessarily get credit for every single hour you were there, but you could get a maximum of 12. The independent study and embedded CE is something that we are interested in doing. No one has actually done it recently, not since I've started working here, but the idea being if you're doing something that you've sort of planned yourself, like a mentoring program or a project that you're doing at your library that you think you could turn into something that might earn credit, we can talk about that, and that'll just be decided on a case-by-case basis. There are some things that, like there was one person who did like one-on-one training with a more experienced librarian, and she just kind of wrote that up and clocked how many hours she did it, and so something like that would work. Another thing that we talked about with one person was teaching technology, like teaching people how to use Overdrive or how to use their smartphones at their libraries. And so as long as something like that is organized into sort of informal syllabus and objectives and that sort of thing, that could work. So on those, we'll talk ahead of time and see what would work. And then the other thing that some people have taken college classes, or there's some online classes that are like 5 or 6 weeks of more intensive time commitment than workshops are, or webinars. And those we will give credit for, and we do 12 CEUs per course. So it might not map exactly to the number of hours you've spent on it, or the college course, but that's just sort of a general thing. I think part of it is we want to give credit for those more in-depth classes, but we don't want one semester class to wipe out all of your electives, because then you don't have the breadth of topics that you would have otherwise. Does that make sense? Any questions about how the credits work or where you can get them? All right, we'll go ahead. I'll talk about specific places you can get credits now. So of course, any of the workshops that we offer here at the Department of Libraries count. The other one that you'll want to really be aware of is the Idaho Commission for Libraries offers free online classes in 3 out of the 4 core areas that we require. So they do not have a public administration topic, but they have all the other 3 and so you can do it on your own time. There's no fee for it, and if you complete the sequence, each topic has 4 courses, and if you do all 4 of the sequence, then you fulfill your requirement. So there's a link on our website to that and to these other places that you can do webinars, but that's one that's probably the one that people use the most, because it will fulfill those core requirements. The Web Junction is another huge one. These are free. They're usually just for the electives. So although they do have some technology ones as well. And I send out, once a month, I send out the new Web Junction offerings, but you can also go on their site anytime. They archive their webinars. And they just have probably every topic you would ever need. And it's just like free webinar. You watch it on your own time. They will send an electronic certificate that you can send to me to show that you did it, and that's a really good way to fill the elective requirements. I forgot to mention that there is a requirement that you show some sort of proof that you've attended something, if it's a virtual thing or in-person thing. So occasionally, like, there's an online offering that doesn't offer something like that, and in that case, if you just send something like a proof of registration, an email that proves that you registered, that will suffice. But generally, if you, like all the Idaho ones, they make a little certificate, and you can just scan that and send. And of course, any of the ones you do here will have a sign-in list and online registration, so we can see that you did that. And then if they aren't from one of these just sort of general ones that a lot of people use and that are sort of famous library continuing ed sort of organizations, just check ahead of time. You know, it could be the Community College of Vermont, or it could be Microsoft has some training, so if you're doing like how to use Microsoft Suite or something like that, those would work. It's just that on any of those ones that aren't library specific, just check ahead of time so that you don't spend your time on it expecting that you're going to get credit. Another thing is it's sometimes useful to know which category it would go into and how many credits you would receive. So I'm going to, hopefully this will show to everybody here. I'm going to try to open this up just to show you from our website. Can everyone see this page from our website now?
It's just showing blacked for me.
Oh, it's not showing the Department of Library's website?
No.
Dang. Okay, I don't really know how to do this, so I guess we'll just talk about it. Well, so if you're on somewhere where you can just go on your own, if you are people online, can they just go pull up the department website, and I can talk you through this?
I'm able to do that.
Okay, so if you go to the Vermont Department of Libraries website, just libraries.vermont.gov, and go to the continuing education page, and then when you're on the continuing education page, there's a link over on the left that says webinars for continuing education. On the top of it says free online webinars. So even if you're not looking at this, I'm just going to briefly talk through it. So basically at the top of the page, and of course you can look at it anytime in the future on our website as well, there's a list of the Web Junction, a link to the Web Junction ones. And then there's a long list there of other organizations that offer CE. And most of these are free. So there are a few that have a fee, and that certainly works too if you're willing and able to do that. But basically, you can look through these. Some of them you can tell by the name are more likely to have technology offerings. Some of them have a mix of things, and all of them, almost all of them, if not all of them, have archived things, so that you don't have to necessarily, do it on a certain schedule, but you can find something that will interest you and fulfill the requirements from that. And then you can also, if you're looking for something specific, just get in touch and I'll try to help you find something if you aren't able to find what you're looking for. So these are the links to the registration page, which I think most of you have already done, but if you haven't, just fill that out. And then there's also a form on our website to fill out to track what you've been taking, and then that's the one that you would send in to me twice a year. So registration, we just let people register whenever they want. There are actually no entrance requirements, so it's called an application on the website, but it's not as if you have to have certain qualifications and get admitted to the program as much as it is. We just need to track that you're signed in, and basically if you're associated with a Vermont library, then that's, or interested in being associated with a Vermont library and live in Vermont, then this is open to you. At some point, if it got overflowing with people, we would probably have to, put first come, first serve with directors first and then other library staff. But especially with the online ones, it doesn't, we're not at that point yet where we'd have to turn anybody away. And so then this is just a timeline of submitting the record of courses taken, submit them, in this case, this time period by mid-May, and then I will process them in order to give anybody who's completed the certificate at the May 28th VLA conference. But again, you can submit and you can get certified throughout the year. It's just that the certificates go out. So, and by that point in May, before May 15th, we'll have had all of the core courses that are offered in the spring. So this is the top link is the one to track your regular courses, and then there's also a form on there for tracking conferences. So that's just a form where you would take it to the conference with you, write down which sessions you went to, get the presenter to sign off on it, and then again you can get up to 12 credits for our conference. Oh, this is an exciting thing. Hopefully you've seen this on the website. This is ALA is offering small library management webinars. So this Vermont State Library has partnered with three other New England state libraries to purchase these webinars, and they're free of charge to anybody in Vermont libraries of the other three states. And so it's basically they're 5 webinars, 90-minute webinars offered by people from ALA staff or other people that have spent a lot of times in small libraries. There's 5 different topics, and they will be recorded, so if you aren't able to do them on Friday afternoons, you can see them later. And this is exciting because it's like really high level CE for one thing, but it also is the first time we've had an alternative to the administration core course that is not in person, because we haven't really been able to find something that would fit with this. So what we're doing with this is to fulfill the core requirement. If somebody attends all 5 of these webinars and then a half-day workshop, that'll be very Vermont specific, that will fulfill the requirements. So you wouldn't have to wait until next fall and do that whole thing in person. But these are going to be great webinars, even if you aren't interested in doing that. And you don't have to do every single one of them. You can do 1 or 5. That's the registration link, but you don't need to worry about like writing that down. I've sent it in, and it's on our website. But so here are the different course options. So supervising staff, day-to-day responsibilities, hiring and recruiting, and partnerships, and then security. So all of these issues are things we get asked questions about all the time. And I know being a small library director, they're all like spot on for like the kind of challenges that we have. You know, that when you're in charge of multiple things, that in a larger library, one person would be in charge of each aspect of it, and then you're on your own, so you're basically doing everything. Or the issue of security is very different if you're in a small rural place that doesn't have a local police force, as opposed to being in a more populated city. So I think these are going to be great, and again, they will be archived, and so you can, if you're going to watch them at all, you should go ahead and register, even if you're not going to do them at the exact time, and then you'll get the link to see them archived. And again, if you do all of them plus our day in May, you will get fulfill the requirement for the core administration class. The administration class is the one that's probably most Vermont specific. So on that one that we do in May, it'll be about library governance, municipal versus incorporated libraries, library finances, working with select boards, and things that are very different in Vermont libraries because each library is its own entity, unlike in other states. So I think most of what will happen in these ALA webinars is going to be completely applicable to Vermont libraries, but there are just a few things that are unique to Vermont, so we wanted to make sure that that was covered as well. And then these are just some of the things that we have coming up. Next Monday, we have a webinar from the Vermont Law School Library on legal reference. So that's basically going to be about if patrons come into the public library wanting help with legal reference, what are the resources that they have at the law library that you could refer them to? What are the things that it's okay to help somebody with? What are things that you're sort of giving unsolicited or unqualified legal advice? So you want to be careful about that. And part of this is a lot of public libraries don't have large reference services anymore, but we still get those kind of questions. I mean, we don't have large print collections anymore. So I think this will be really helpful. And basically that's a resource that's open to all of us, but not a lot of people know about it. So I think that's going to be really helpful for helping patrons with legal questions. We have 2 genealogy workshops also next week. The first one, general genealogy, and we're partnering with the Vermont Historical Society and the state archives to do that. And again, all of that one will also be not so much training you yourself to do genealogy as much as it is to train librarians to help patrons who come in with those questions, and either helping them directly or saying, we don't have those services here, but this is what the Historical Society, the archives has. So basically, like interpreting a reference question as sending this, in a sense, sending the person somewhere else, but having the training to know where to send them. And the afternoon one is a sort of a niche genealogy thing, a radical genealogy, which is basically looking at family histories from a cultural, historic, and sort of social justice issues. So looking at sort of what was happening in the world when your ancestors might have been experiencing certain things like migration or what was happening economically in the world. So there are some specific resources that are very helpful with that. And then we're having our first small rural library roundtable, which I hope you will all consider.
Joy?
Yes.
Do you know if those are to be recorded, the genealogy courses, for future
That's a
archive
good question. And I don't know the answer to that, but I will check because I need to ask, it'll be up to the presenters if they're okay with it. But my guess would probably be yes, but I had not thought of asking, so I will make a note now to see about that.
Thank you kindly.
Yeah. So the small rural library, that one is here in Barrie, but there you can also attend virtually. So that's on the 22nd. And that's basically just, we'll discuss different issues that come up. It'll kind of depend on who's there and what their interests are, but again, things that are challenges and opportunities that happen when you're a one person or a very small staff library that might not necessarily be the same as in some of the larger libraries. There's always summer reading program workshops to help youth librarians and directors who are doing that get ready for the summer programs. Laura Keenan is partnering with some other organizations around Vermont, doing trainings at various libraries about the opioid crisis and how library staff can respond to that. And then we do have those core courses coming up. And we are going to host, we don't have the exact details on this yet, but there's going to be a workshop. Hopefully one up in northern Vermont and one in southern Vermont about hosting a signature event using the Vermont Fairy Tale Festival as an example of that. You can also stay posted for some census training that we're going to be doing, how libraries can support the 2020 census. And the details and registration and dates and everything for all of these are on our website. But I just wanted to give you an idea about some of the ideas that we were covering. And we are always adding other things, so that's just what we have so far. We're also always open to ideas about something that you're working on that you feel like you could use more training in. Because if you're feeling that way, probably other librarians are as well. So always, if you have an idea about what workshop might be helpful for you, please let me know, and we can try to make that happen. And that's about it from my end, but I'm happy to answer any questions. There is an evaluation there as well. If you can fill that out, that'll be helpful for next time. And then if you have questions, let me know. Anybody? Okay, well, if no one has questions, I will go ahead and...
Joy?
Yes. Mm-hmm.
I'm a little confused with the 4 core courses.
Okay.
Because I thought on one hand that there's no way you can take them all in one calendar year, but then it seemed like 2 were offered in the spring and 2 were offered in the fall.
Right, so you can do them all in one calendar year.
Oh, okay. So they are all offered every calendar year then.
Yes, it's just that the in-person ones are only offered once. So, like if you miss the in-person one, it won't come up again in person for about a year. We were avoiding the winter. Like the first year I was here, I mistakenly put some of the core ones like in January, and some people couldn't make it, and we had to reschedule. And so it's just we're trying to keep we do have one in March. Hopefully that will work. But keep them in March, but try to wrap them up also by the conference. If it's somebody's last class, they can finish by then. And then there are those other options, online options as well. Any other questions?
Yep. Hi. I have a question, Joy. Actually, two questions. Is it clear which requirements must be attained in person? And then my second question would be, is there like a good flow that you would recommend that helps balance, to get a really good, well-rounded educational experience? Do you see that it's best if somebody, does a certain kind of, flow of classes,
yeah.
or does it matter? Can you kind of ramp up all your electives when you have that window of opportunity, or do you think it helps to get this sort of flyover by doing some of these intensive online webinars first?
That's
like
an
introduction.
Good question. So first of all, about the in-person thing, up until we had this ALA thing that's coming up starting at the end of this month, the only class that was required to be in person was the administration class, because we didn't have an online version, and also that's the one that is Vermont specific. So, but with this ALA management training, which is going to be, at least as robust, if probably more so than our most of our workshops, we felt that would fulfill it, as long as we did also touch on those things that are Vermont specific, because some of the funding and each library being a standalone thing, that's not the way libraries are in most states. So I'm imagining that those workshops won't cover exactly that. So for now, actually, starting when those ALA workshops are available, all of the core courses there's an alternative online. And so to your other question, I think probably the ideal way to do it would be to do the core courses and then fill out with electives depending on what your job required. Like if you're a youth services person, you would take some youth things for electives. If you do a lot of IT, you beef up your electives and do some of those in addition to the required technology. The reality is that, like, most people are trying to fit this in with, a very busy schedule. So I think really it works, any order that you want to do it in. One thing that there's nothing that says you can't do that, but if you took all of your electives in very similar kind of topics, they would count, but you wouldn't get as broad of a, an education about what things that you might be required for. There's, I think when this program first started, it was almost all, if not all, library directors, so they were doing a lot of administrative things and maybe, in charge of the library and dealing with trustees. And we now have people, more library staff in addition to directors, that aren't necessarily the person that is doing all that, but it's still really good to get training in that, because at some point you might be doing that. And for example, another good example of that administratively is you might be working in a municipal library and then switch to an incorporated library. And if you aren't aware of sort of the differences between that, it's hard to make the switch. And it's also, in that case, just kind of good to know what some of your other librarian colleagues are dealing with, and because it's different in each town. And that, I think, is helpful just, in terms of the dialogue in the listserv and that kind of thing. And also, again, just to think, and there's a few different reasons for doing this program. I think one is to just get better at your job. One is to potentially move into a job with more responsibility. And then, of course, there's the advocacy of just hopefully maybe getting paid more for the job you are doing. But I think probably the way that's most effective to approach it is just to try to learn more about librarianship in general, so that everybody who's working in Vermont libraries has an understanding about how libraries work and what are the responsibilities of the director, and some degree how to do certain jobs even if you're not doing them at this point. Like, so if you're not maybe selecting the books for your library, that's interesting. Okay. Hang on, somebody said they can't hear. Is it? I just wrote it down to see Can people hear me still? Some they lost audio?
I can hear.
Okay.
I can
I can hear.
Hear you.
Okay.
I can hear.
Okay. I'm just going to write the note back. Now I lost my train of thought a little bit, but what was I talking about? I guess, yeah, I know what it was, the collection development example. So people are taking, there's a collection development requirement, but not everybody who's in this program is going to actually be buying books, but it's really important, even if you're working at the circulation desk, that you have an understanding of what the librarian is going through while doing that. So it's basically, an overview of the different responsibilities so that even you can hopefully do them yourselves if that's your job, or you move into a job with that, or at least have an understanding of the profession and what your colleagues are doing. Are there any other questions? Okay, sounds like there are not any other questions right now, but I'm always available by phone or mail, and happy to answer any questions. If you think of things after this, if your notes, whatever, just let me know. And again, I'm really glad that you're in the program, and I hope to see you in person at some workshops, and good luck. Oh, just a second, I see one more question about submitting other courses. So there's a question, do you want them submitted as you go or at the end? So twice a year is good. So this next time, if you can just collect them and send them in May, by May 15th, and then I will send them, I will process them and send you an update. And then again in December. So basically think of it sort of like reading semesters. With the summer we don't do as much just because so many librarians are very busy with summer reading. But yeah, that's basically it. I mean, if you send them in at a different time, I'll just tuck them away and process them in May and December, just again, so I'm not constantly trying to keep up with processing 150 people's things. But, don't worry too much about it if you don't keep to that timeline.
Joy, I have one more question too. Hi, with the ALA courses, is it clear which ones satisfy the requirements for the administrative category, the core courses? Because it does look like they have a lot of great offerings there. But should we kind of vet these with you in advance and say, am I on the right track? Is this suite of courses going to satisfy that requirement?
Are you talking about the ones that we're offering through, like in January and February?
I'm talking about the ALA online webinars.
So not everyone may be on the listservs, the state listserv.
Okay, so ones that
they may not be aware of the email.
Okay, so there's two different things. Like there's this series that they're offering specifically for small library management. So if you do those, if you have to do the entire suite of the 5 of them, plus our half-day in-person course to fulfill a requirement.
Okay.
If you did just some of them, they would still count for CE credit, but it would just be, I believe, 1.5 CEUs for each webinar because they're 90 minutes. But if you do all of them together, we don't need to vet those. I mean, they're vetted plenty, so they definitely know they're going to be great courses. And then, but ALA does offer other webinars. Basically, what you can't do for the core courses, except in this one case with these upcoming ALA webinars, is do like 25 one-hour webinars that are somewhat about administration. That doesn't work for the core courses, but those would work for electives if you did that. Does that make sense? I just want to make sure there's a distinction between, there's this suite of courses that the 4 state libraries purchase, basically. Those will count for the core course if you do all of them plus our half day. And any of the
they're not
webinars are a different matter.
Okay, and they're not offered yet until later on in the month. Is that
Right.
right?
The first one is January 24th, and then basically
Okay.
they're Fridays at 1:00 for once a week, starting January 24th for 5 weeks. But they will also be archived, and watching them archived would also earn credit. Any other questions? All right. Well, again, just do get in touch anytime as you're going through it, and keep a look at our website fairly often because it changes. And again, you can get much more information about the specific courses on there and the registration links. And I think that's about it. Thank you, everybody.
Thank
you, Jill.
Thank you.
Thanks. Good luck, everyone.
Yeah. Have fun.
Same to you.
Bye-bye.
Bye, everybody.
Bye.